Hello, everybody, and welcome into another roundtable here at the Hockey Writers. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and also joined in by my co-host, Jacob Billington. And we also got guest Nick Haydon here for another episode, coming with a new guest. We're trying to seem different guests every time, but Nick, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you guys?
Doing great. Jacob, how's it going?
Going great. Happy to be here.
All right. Well, we're into our third episode of the season. And I mean, there's not always major news as we go through, but there is some stuff kind of trickling. And we also got a bunch of games going on and had a full Saturday that we just finished up, which has a bunch of stuff we can talk about. So, but let's start with our usual news and rumors roundup, which we've got a couple things. It's not major, but we do have a couple things we can talk about. And it's goaltending, which seems to be a major topic in the first week of this show. We've talked about goalies most of the time. And this is on, we're going to start in with the Colorado Avalanche. Not a very good start to the season overall as a team and the goaltending. Alex and Georgiev has been, I don't know, I want to say bad. He's not been good. He's been horrible. And they claimed Kaapo Kähkönen on waivers from the Winnipeg Jets to kind of maybe shore up the goaltending. They got Annunen as well for backup. I'll start with you, Jacob. But what do you think about the Colorado's goaltending right now? I mean, Georgiev had a lot of. I mean, He didn't play very well last season either. He had a ton of minutes. I mean, he was a workhorse last season. I should this be something that Avs fans should be worried about right now? I mean, there's been talk maybe they're going to move one of these goalies, but who are they going to replace him with is the question. What do you think about this whole situation?
Yeah, I would not feel much confidence at all going with Alexander Georgiev. I mean he's only 28 years old. He's still got lots of runway left in terms of goalie age. But so he spent the first few years of his career in New York, and he was a fine backup. And obviously Colorado saw something in him. They picked him up. He had a 919 save percentage in his first year with 62 games. Great, not much more you can ask for there. Last year he had an 897 in 63 games. This year he's down to a .680 in 2 games. Obviously, it's going to come up. It's not going to stay at 680. He's not going to let in. He's averaging like 7.75 goals against. That's not going to be a long-term thing. I don't think that he is capable of being a true number one. Obviously, he did show it 2 years ago, but that was a flash in the pan. Other than that, his best season was 34 games and a 910 save percentage. So, I don't see much reason to trust him to be the number one. If you can find a way to upgrade, by all means, you should take any shot at it. Obviously, the Avalanche don't have the best cap situation at the moment, especially with the uncertainty surrounding Gabriel Landeskog, Valerie Nichushkin coming back. They don't have a ton of flexibility. Mikko Rantanen needs a new contract. I don't know what they do. Obviously, they picked up Kahkonen, like you mentioned. I think that he's a fine backup goaltender. So is Eustace Annunen. I like them both as backups. I like Georgiev as a backup as well. They just need to get a bona fide starter, and I don't think that that's Georgiev.
Yeah, I mean, what other options do they got right now? I mean, they don't have, like, say, no cap space. So it's like, it's going to be tough. Nick, should Avs fans have confidence in, like, maybe Kahkonen can, I mean, he was a good goalie. He was actually the Minnesota Wild's goaltender of the future not that long ago. He's not old. I mean, he's been stuck behind some pretty bad defenses in San Jose. I Could he become something, or is this just something to kind of maybe like throw some darts at the board to see? Hopefully, one of these goalies can maybe turn it around.
It does have that feeling of throwing darts at the board. I think Jacob used the word backup a few different times, but describing all three of these goalies, and that's, putting the pin on the head there, and that none of them are number ones, and Kakinen might give them that temporary solution, but I don't know that any of those goalies are gonna give them long-term stability. But something I was thinking about when we were prepping for this, and I'd like to know what both of you guys think is this signifying something deeper going on with the Avalanche in terms of their defensive
Mm.
issues overall? And we don't have to dive into that now, but I was looking, Jacob talked about Georgiev's numbers going down last year. I mean, they were okay. Annunen's, I think, went down a little bit as well. And it seems like the Avalanche are finding themselves in a spot where they're not as reliable defensively. And when you need a goalie who is, they need a goalie that's going to make the save, of course. But sometimes it's not always his fault. And I think the Avalanche have that tendency, especially since Landeskog has been out the past 2 seasons, of winning those high scoring games. And I think that bolstered Georgiev's wins number a little bit. They look nice. But you're winning 8-6 or 5-4 or 5-3. I mean, what they lose to the Golden Knights and they gave up 8 goals, but they
Yeah.
scored four, or was it six? So it's just a run and gun style that they're playing right now. And if you're going to do that, you need a goalie that can make the save. So I don't think that Georgiev is doing that. I don't know that Kahkonen can do that for a whole season. I mean, Annunen's shown flashes. He's much younger, right?
Mhm.
But I mean, when you go to a full 82 game schedule, that's a big workload for someone who hasn't played a lot. So, going back to your original question, Kahkonen, maybe he can help, but I think there's something deeper going on with the
Mhm.
Avalanche. I really do. And Georgiev isn't helping, but I also think he's kind of taking the brunt of some of the other issues that are going on there.
Well, I like what you mentioned about the defense because obviously you
Mhm.
have Taves and Makar, two fantastic defensemen. You're not worried about that. Sam Girard is very hit and miss.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Sometimes he's really good, sometimes he's really not. Josh Manson is not the defenseman that he was when they acquired him.
Mhm.
He is the only true physical presence on that blue line, and I think that's why they value him so much. And then on the third pair, you have Calvin DeHaan and Sam Olinsky.
Mhm.
That's a lot of names. Um,
Yes.
like I don't think that their defense is as good as it once was. I
Yeah,
will mention one thing. Ville Husso was on waivers. If
Mhm.
they can
I
clear
saw
up
that.
$4 million or um get Detroit to eat half of it and get him
Mhm.
at $2 million, I would absolutely be looking at taking on Ville Husso.
Yeah, you guys make a good point about the defense. I mean, goalies can only help so much when you're giving up a lot, and of course, you want them to make the saves that they're supposed to. But when you're giving up high danger chances and stuff like that, and like you say, they do have two legitimate number one defensemen, one really good pairing, but beyond that, they can't play 60 minutes. I mean, that's just the
Hmm.
day. Makar plays close to 30, but I mean, you're looking at these guys. I mean, and Makar's had some injury issues the last couple seasons. So it's like, do you want them to run him into the ground? It is tough. I think that is a big issue. I think defense has got to be kind of something they address as well, which is tough again without the cap space to kind of upgrade there. It is
Certainly.
a very tough situation the Avs are in, right? All right.
I
Well,
think we'll talk about
oh yeah,
this just real quick, just a little bit further down the show notes. But I think they're going to be one of the teams we talk about the slow starts and
yeah,
just putting this for us to circle back to. It's a different team now than it was when they won the cup. And
yeah.
I know we're talking about the defensive depth, but I think when we go talk about their slow start, we have to remember it's a completely different team. So this is just one of the issues.
Yeah, I think it's probably the biggest one at this point, and we'll get into it later on here.
Mhm.
Let's move to another news with another goalie, and that's in Seattle. Joey Daccord gets a big extension. The big question now is what happens with Philipp Grubauer? I mean, they basically said Daccord's the guy. He's of course much younger, and he had a great season last season, and it looks like he's the number one this season. Early on. Nick, what do you think about the goaltending situation in Seattle? Because they've got some now question marks with Grubauer, he's got a ton of money tied up in his contract. What happens with that?
Yeah, and I think that's something you have to think about right away is how much money is he making? Would they be able to move Grubauer? And clearly, I mean, what it is, 5 years, 25 million for Decord, right? So that's a pretty strong signal that they trust him for the foreseeable future. It's a good payday for Decord, and it's not too much for Seattle. But I also was thinking, and I'd like to know what you guys think about this as well. Are they going to be able to convince Grubauer to take on some sort of mentoring, almost backup
Mm.
role. And that's maybe a hard word. And maybe I'm not a coach, I'm not a GM, so I wouldn't approach it that way with him. But if Daccord is their number one, you wouldn't mind having Grubauer there, right? To show him the ropes a little bit more, take off some of the pressure of easing in almost into a number one role. The question is Grubauer going to be okay with that? And these are competitive players. Nobody wants some kid coming in and taking their spot. And Grubauer is a proven NHL goalie he's had some ups and downs, but he's pretty consistent, and they brought him there for a reason. So I don't know that they'll be able to move him. I don't know what off the top of my head what he's making. Um, but do you think they would want to keep him and try to have him there to help Daccord? That's what I immediately thought of. I just don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, Grubauer's making
Yeah.
5.9 for 3 more seasons. So
Who's going to take that? Who would take that? Yeah.
I was gonna say, well, what about the Avalanche? Bring him back, but I mean, they just don't have the money to do it, and he hasn't really shown a lot in Seattle. I mean, he's struggled. His numbers don't look very good, and he's been taken. I mean, Deccord's taken his job. I mean, that's just what it
Hmm.
is, and like you say, that extension basically signals they want him to be the number one moving forward. It is going to be tough to see what Grubauer, is he going to be okay with going into a mentorship role, being the backup, or I think maybe a 1A, 1B, but he has to play well whenever he's in net. I think that's the biggest thing. If he
Hmm.
doesn't, well, Deccord's the better option. He's going to be the one playing. So man, it is another tough situation there. Jacob, you have any other, thoughts about Grubauer, Daccord? I mean, they already got rid of their third goalie that they had last season. He's in uh, Florida, I believe he is.
yeah, he's
Treacher's
back
in
in
Florida.
Florida.
So I mean,
Hmm.
now that's just the two of them. Would Grubauer be okay with being a mentor, or is that something that he maybe wants out in the near future?
Well, I have no idea what happened with Grubauer. I mean, you look at his
Yeah,
stats, and before signing in Seattle, his worst season by save percentage was 915
yeah,
in 2 games in his rookie season, or well, his first NHL appearances. And he's been like 926, 923, 922, 918, 920. Like he was a very, very good goaltender for the Capitals and the Avalanche. And he signed in Washington, or he signed in Seattle. 889, 895,
yeah,
899, and he has an 880 this season. He has not hit 900 in Seattle,
yeah.
and I do not
Hmm.
understand what's going on. They're a defensive-minded team. They've had fair coaching. I'm not going to say good nor bad, but they've had fair coaching throughout their 4 years. I just don't understand what happened with Grubauer. But then I look at Joey Daccord, and he has one, two, he has played in parts of 6 seasons and has 70 career games.
Hmm.
And you're going to give him $25 million dollars? I don't buy it. I
Hmm.
see some people saying that it's a head scratcher. I see some people saying that they're more than happy to see this deal handed out. I'm on the head scratcher side. Like yeah, he had a good season last year, 50 games, 916 save percentage. You look at Anton Forsberg a couple of years ago after getting claimed on waivers on a miserable Ottawa team, he had a 917 save
Yeah.
percentage. He's not worth $25 million dollars. Like I don't know. I just think that's going to come back to bite them. And that contract hasn't started yet. That's 5 years starting
Yeah.
next year.
It feels like a bet, doesn't it? It feels
Yeah.
like a bet that if it pays off, they're gonna look good because he's only making 5 million. Right now, I completely agree with you though that it's a lot for someone who's only played 70 NHL games. It kind
Yeah.
of reminds me of Dylan Guenther getting the long term in Utah for seven something million, and everybody's like, yeah, this kid's got talent, but what has he done for me lately? So I wonder if that's a similar approach here with the cord that if it pays off, they're gonna look like geniuses,
Yeah.
but it's hard to understand it right now.
But even
True.
with
And
Guenther, he's a 20-year-old superstar prospect.
yeah.
And he was
Hmm.
really good last year. Like Joey Dacord's almost 29 years old.
Yeah. He's
Yeah,
not really young. Yeah.
yeah, true.
So, I mean, looking at, I mean, Grubauer's allowed 2 goals again. Yes. As we're recording here, they're down 2-0 against the Stars. So it's like he's already starting this season not too well either. yeah, it is tough to say where. I mean, it's the same thing with Jonathan Huberdeau. What happens to these players when they go to some teams? And they what happens to them? And Grubauer's another one. I mean, I don't understand why he can't go over 900 in Seattle, and Seattle's not the worst defensive team. So
They're not
yeah,
the worst, but those teams, I mean, credit to the teams that he played for, right? Colorado was good, Washington was good, and maybe it is that much of Seattle's not bad, but they're not those teams, and it's showing a little bit of his wear and tear and some of the weaknesses that he has. Maybe it's that, but I don't know. I mean, to be that consistent across two franchises for that long, you think he's got a little more. So maybe it's not the best fit.
yeah.
And he was never the number one guy, but he was not just a backup either. Like he would split almost every
Mhm.
season, outside
Mhm.
of his first couple of years, of course. And
Yeah.
even in the 2017-18 season where Braden Holtby was just insane, and the Capitals won the
Yeah.
cup, he played 35 regular season games.
Yeah.
And did he start some of the playoffs there too? I mean, I
I
think
believe so.
Yeah.
yeah. So he's got the ability, he's got
Yeah.
the experience. So something's not clicking there, obviously, and that doesn't need to be said. The numbers show that.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. I mean, like I say, it's not going to be easy to move if they do want to trade him because I mean, you're probably gonna have to eat some salary if they do want to move him. Um, yeah, it's going to be a tough situation there. Now that they got Daccord for this long term, and what if he doesn't work out? Then you're really
Right.
stuck. All right.
Hmm. Yeah.
All right, let's move on to some of the stuff that's happened this season so far, and quite a bit. I mean, it's been about a week. I mean, maybe less than a week now for the full season starting here, and there are some things that we can talk about. And starting with the contenders, some of these teams that aren't starting very well. I mean, yes, 2 games, 3 games. Maybe we're jumping to the conclusions, but like I said in the last episode, this is what we do. We jump to conclusions. So. Let's start with the 4 teams that have gone 0-2. I mean, the Oilers, by the time you're watching this, they may be 1-2, but they're one tied at 1 with the Flames as we're recording here after the second period. So, but right now they still haven't started very well. So you got the Colorado Avalanche 0-2. You got the Edmonton Oilers 0-2. Predators are 0-2, and the Vancouver Canucks are 0-2, which haven't won, but I mean they got 2 points. So I'll start with you, Jacob. Are you surprised by these slow starts of these 4 teams? I mean, which one are you most surprised by? I mean, all these teams are I guess maybe the Predators are on the borderline of contending. I mean, they made the playoffs last season, and of course, all those big signings that they made. Which one surprises you the most here?
I mean, I could sit here and I could give you the sexy answer and say that the Predators need to blow everything up. Trade Saros, trade Yossi. The Oilers need to trade McDavid. And like it's just overreaction season.
Yeah.
And the Oilers had a very short off season. So they're coming in. They're they're gonna be fine. The Avalanche do have some more trouble with their roster. But again, they're gonna be fine. They have Rantanen, they have McKinnon, they have Taves, they have Makar. They're gonna be fine. You don't like he can outscore any problem. It might not be a good thing, but you
Mm,
can. And then for the Predators and Canucks, they'll be fine as well. I'm not too concerned about any of them. If I was going to be, it would be the Predators, and that's
mm,
just because of how much turnover that they had. And it just sometimes it takes a little bit longer for a team to click.
mm.
But it's also very, very normal for them.
For sure. And Nick, what about you about these teams? I mean, it is very early. I mean, 2 games. You can have a 3 game winning streak, and all of a sudden this is erased. But are you surprised by these slow starts?
I mean, I'm not surprised by the Avalanche. I do think that they have some more issues there. And I know I mentioned earlier we're going to come back to it, and I was doing a little bit digging on their roster when they won the cup. And if I did the math right, they have 11 players gone from that 2022 roster to this season. That's a lot of change. And yeah, you can list McKinnon and Rantanen and Makar and Taves, but I'm not convinced that they're in the same team that they were. And I do
Mm,
think people underestimate not having Landeskog in the locker room. And if you watch any of the face-off series on Prime, they followed him around and you could tell how much they miss him. And I think as an on-ice
mm,
presence, of course, but in the locker room, it's got to be hard to not have him there. I mean, he led them to the Stanley Cup, and they just seem thinner
Mm,
without him, you know? I mean, they seem thinner on the ice, but especially with leadership. So I think if he comes back, I'm a little more optimistic like Jacob is, because not only will that be a big boost on the ice, but I think just confidence
mm,
wise and feeling like themselves again, that will help them a lot. But I mean, I've heard a lot of people talk about that leadership vacuum and who's filling that.
mm,
I mean, McKinnon on the ice, of course, but it's not easy to be the captain, you know, of a team in the
mm,
NHL. And I think they're feeling a lot of the effects of that. As for the other teams, I think you're right, Jacob. I think a lot of it's overreaction. The Predators, I mean, they changed a lot.
mm.
And,
Yes.
you know, the Stamkos signing is going to be interesting. And I was talking to some friends and family about it, and I wonder how long it will take him to find his footing there. And
Mm,
I don't know how else to say this without just being blunt about it. I wonder if his heart is in it. And I only mean that in the sense it's hard to leave your home for 16 years when you're the captain and you win two Stanley Cups, no
yeah.
matter how nice the paycheck is and how excited you are, because Nashville is an exciting team. That's a hard switch. And I wonder, that's the only way I know how to say it. Is
Mm,
his heart going to be in it the same way it would be? And I don't mean that as a disrespect to his
mm,
competitive edge. It's not that, but it's just, it's different to play for a different team. It's not like he's a journeyman who's been all over the league and putting on different jerseys. So him, I'm a little worried about him. And
mm,
maybe that's just becoming from I covered them a little bit here at the Hockey Writers. So he's been my favorite player pretty much my
mm,
whole life. So I think that will be interesting to see. And they have a lot of big names in their locker room going
mm.
back to leadership, you know, and I don't get the feeling just watching them that they have any issues with too many leaders. You know, I mean, they've got O'Reilly and Yossi and Forsberg and Stamkos, but bringing in Marchessault too. I mean, it's a lot. It's
Yeah.
just a lot going on there, and it's not easy to make that work like that. So I'm not concerned, but at the same time, I'm a little concerned because you got to make that place feel like
Mm.
home, and how are they going to do that for him, and how's he going to do that? So it's just something I was thinking over. But the Oilers, they're going to be fine. They could probably lose half the season and then come back and go on a Stanley Cup run. Who knows? And the Canucks, I'm not worried about either.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I mean, I think the Avs that you make a good point with that leadership thing. I mean, Landeskog is he hasn't played for 2 years, and even the thing is when he comes back, what is he going to look like? I think that's the biggest thing too on the ice. I mean, of course, his leadership's going to be there, even when he does return. It's just how long will it take for him to get back up to speed and become the player that he was? Will he become the player that he was again? Is another question. It was a major surgery. It's taken a long time to rehab it. I it is a tough thing, and I don't know if he's going to be that type of player again. We'll see. I mean, when he does come back, but yeah, I think the Avs. I think for me, I think I'm more concerned with them because Nichushkin's another one. He won't be back for a long time, and that he has to go through the NHLPA and the NHL to kind of reinstate him too. It is a really interesting thing, and yeah, the Avs are going to be. The thing is, they're so stuck with their cap situation as long as those guys are out, because they have to say, well, we have to have the cap space for when they come back. They can't just go and trade and sign and all these people to fill the cap because, well, they're going to have room for these other guys to come back. So, yeah, they're in a tough situation there. I mean, you to make a good point with the Predators with so much turnover, so many big names coming in. Yeah, it's going to take some time. The Canucks too. I mean, they brought in quite a few new faces. Two new guys in the top six. You got, Canucks with a few guys in the bottom. They changed their defense from what they had pretty much from last season again, after having it from. It's going to take some time for them to kind of integrate those new faces too. So, yeah, I think these teams are all going to be okay. It's very early, but it is tough to see them, lose a couple games, especially the Oilers, how badly they lost the first two, right? So this game against the Flames, they're not giving up as many goals. So
Hey, Matthew, I've got a question for you when I
yeah.
was thinking about the Canucks. And I got a stat for you. So one, my stat is if I did the math right, which I'm saying a lot because I'm not a math guy, this season or this year, 2024, I think in 48 regular season games, Pettersson only has 46 points. regular season games. I think about right. So just under a point of game. Are
Hmm.
you, I see the Canucks jerseys hanging there. Are you, what's going on with him? Do you think that's part of the issue? I mean, I know the playoffs, that's a whole different thing, but is that any concern for you with his regular season play?
There's a little bit of concern, but I mean, he's been dealing with tendonitis in his knee for the last like since January, apparently.
Hmm.
And he was still dealing with it in training camp. It's something he's going to have to manage, I guess. But he has looked. I haven't liked how he's looked in the first two games. Again, he's got two new wingers on
Hmm.
his line to kind of gain some chemistry with. He's looked relatively good with Jake DeBrusk. Daniel Sprong, I don't think is the right guy to be on that line. Doesn't look like it so far. But I'm not worried right now, but I have been over this last bit. I was hoping he would come in and look better at to start the season, but
Hmm.
he is a really skilled player, and I think
Well, yeah.
eventually he'll hopefully turn it around. Everyone's already kind of saying it's Louis Eriksson 2.0. We're gonna this $11 million contract is gonna come and bite them. He's so different from Louis Eriksson, especially when he signed here. I hate that comparison. It doesn't work.
Mhm.
But I think he's gonna be fine. Talk to me in a month and maybe I'll change my tune. I don't know,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
we'll see.
I like him. He's awesome. He reminds me of Datsuk, to be honest, the way he moves and the way he stops with he can move his feet and his hands. So
Yeah.
I hope that he gets back on because that was surprising that he's not at a point of game. But I
Yeah.
didn't know he was dealing with the tendonitis. So
Yeah.
that is good to know. That makes more sense. And that stat that I pulled was from January, so it all adds up.
Well, you look at what he did in January that last season. He was on fire.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, he is a guy I think he'll figure it, and as long as his body works, I think too he's another guy that needs to shoot more. I mean, he just
Mm.
passes the puck way too much when he can just shoot it, and he's got such a good shot. So yeah, we'll see. I hope that he'll be fine because he's one of my favorite players to watch too. So part of Quinn Hughes as well, of course. All right, let's move to a team that is off to a great start, and that's the Utah Hockey Club. They're 3-0. Who knew? And also looking really good in their first three games. I mean, against the Rangers, they did give up quite a few goals, but I mean, 6-5 is still won. Against a really good Rangers team. So, Jacob, are they for real? Are they a team that actually could contend for a playoff spot? We've asked that question a few times, but now they're 3-0. What do you think?
Well, I mean, honestly, I didn't think we could take this team seriously when they named Clayton Keller captain instead of Julian Lutz. That's a bit of a throwback to an old episode that we did.
Yeah.
But no, I said this last episode. I think that this is their year. Ride the magic of Utah. And I talked about it last time. The start to the season that they had last year was phenomenal, and it was the noise, it was all the team stuff that threw them off. Um, and so I think they're for real. I think that maybe they're not going to go 82-0. They're probably going to lose a couple games here and there. But no, I think that they can comfortably make the playoffs if all things go well.
Yeah, they have been really impressive, and we'll talk about one of their guys that have been really impressive later on. Nick, what about you, Utah? I mean, I don't think everyone expected them to. Maybe they were going to have a bit of a boost right at the beginning of the season because of a new franchise, all that stuff. But are you surprised, or are they real? Are they for real being 3-0 to start the season?
I think I'm on the Utah train. I think I'm gonna move there. I think I'm gonna just inculcate myself into that city because it looks awesome.
Yeah.
And I mean that opening night, they had all of the energy. So
Yeah.
I think they're for real in the sense that they can contend for a playoff spot. Obviously, I don't know how long the high will last, but the thing that I've noticed watching them is that their players just have that extra pep in their step and they look like they're playing with some confidence and all of the baggage is off of their
Mhm.
shoulders. So I think that is allowing those players to shine and that will help them a lot. So I think they're for real, but I don't know how long this winning streak will last, but they'll be knocking on the playoff door.
Yeah, I mean, I think last season, all those that long losing streak just messed them up. They had a real, like Jacob said, a really good start to the season. There was talk about them potentially making the playoffs, but then they just went on that horrible losing streak of double digits, and it just fell them down, dropped them down to the point where you're like, yeah, they're back to being a rebuilding team and all that stuff. So made some huge moves in the offseason and looks like it's paying off so far. Yeah, I mean, they're playing the Devils next. We'll see how they go with them, but I think they are for real. There are a lot of good young players that have started off the season really well too,
Hmm.
and they've got more coming too. It is, and they've added some really good veterans like Sergachev, which is huge for their defense, and then their goaltending looks so far so good too. So yeah, I think they're for real too, and it's really exciting to see the fan base there because. All the time when you're watching in Arizona, their buildings weren't full, or I mean, at Mullet Arena, I guess they filled up, but that's a small arena. So yeah, it's great to see to start for them. All right, moving to a player that's off to a great start, and this guy I mentioned at the beginning of the show, Jonathan Huberdeau, has 5 points in his first two games to start the season. He has no points in the game that's going on right now so far, but Jacob, is he finally back? Is he the guy that everyone thought that Calgary was getting from the Florida Panthers? Maybe he's not back to the 100-point guy, but to start, it looks pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, at this point, that would be like the worst case scenario for the Flames because they're finally starting to go towards the bottom of the standings where they need to be. And of course, here comes Jonathan Huberdeau. I'm gonna bring you right back up to the murky middle. But no, I think that obviously they'd be more than happy to have him back to even a shell of his old
Yeah.
self. I don't think it's gonna last. He's shown a couple years over and over that it's just not working for him in Calgary. If it does, I'm more than happy to see that. I'm always cheering for the player, and I want every player to thrive. Unless they're ones that go out and target other players or Jack Eye.
Yeah.
But um, yeah, like I would love to see Huber to go get back to the 80-point mark.
Yeah.
And just kind of like I like the underdog story. At this point, Huberto's an underdog. Everybody
Yeah.
is writing him off. And I love
Mm.
that. So yeah, I'd love to see Huberto get back.
Sure. And Nick, what about you for Huberto? I don't know if you've watched any of the games there, but how does he look this season? Does he look like he's back to that type of play? I know a lot of the goals that he's scored have been more in the crease, more of a gritty goals, but
Mhm.
what do you think about his performance so far this season?
Well, I like that. I like that grit. I think Jacob was right. He's been pretty vocal that he hasn't been comfortable. I mean, in Calgary, and that it was an adjustment. So to me, to see him get back, being a little grittier and more confident, makes me feel like he's feeling more comfortable. I don't know that he'll keep this pace up, but when what I've seen him play, I mean, what it's been 2 games, he's playing with less hesitation
Hmm.
when he gets the puck. I mean, I think what made him so good in that final season in Florida is he would slow the game down and just pick teams apart, whether it
Hmm.
was with his little, stutter steps on the wall or passes. He didn't have that confidence the past 2 seasons in
Hmm.
Calgary. I mean, he would literally fumble the puck,
Yeah.
and he looked lost and he hasn't looked lost. So I think that's all good signs for him coming into the season. And you hope that for his sake that he finds that form. But Jacob, I didn't think about it like that, that he'll bring them back up to the murky middle, and that would not be good. So yeah, it's kind of a catch-22, I guess, in some sense, but you want to see him to start to earn that contract in a sense. And I mean, the guy's got skill and he's not old, right? He's 31. He's got some time left. And Calgary is just an interesting situation altogether and who they're going to surround him with and who he's playing with, but it's working right now. So he looks to be back to some confidence in some of his older self, and that's good for him.
Yeah, I think the gritty game part of his game, I mean, he's not known as a gritty player, but that is good to be added to his game. And maybe that's what he kind of figured. Okay, I just got to get a bit more gritty, go to the dirty areas, maybe get some goals and get some confidence. And then maybe he can return to that finesse stuff that you were talking about in Florida, where when you don't have confidence, those moves just don't work. I mean,
Mm-mm.
it's just the reality of it. When you're confident, it just happens. Your natural skill just takes over, and that's something he hasn't had in the last 2 seasons. And we'll see if
Mm-mm.
it can continue. I mean, fourth liners have big long, these hot streaks too. So I mean, 2 games, 5 points. Some fourth liners get that sometimes. So we'll see if he can sustain that moving forward. All
Do you
right.
think he's motivated at all? Just throw it out there that
Yeah.
Florida just won. I mean, do you think that's in his mind going into the season? I mean, I
That's
Oh,
wonder if
true.
he's got a chip on his shoulder.
That's a good point.
yeah. Probably. I mean, when he was he didn't anticipate the trade. I know that, right? So I mean, it's something that he thought he was going to be long term in Florida, and yeah, I think it could motivate him to kind of say, well, I am still, worth what I'm getting paid, and that type of player that he does want to still win. And I don't know how far away Calgary is from being that team again. But yeah, I think he wants to prove that he can still be that type of player because I refuse to believe that you just lose it. I mean, 100, he was an over 100 point guy, and all of a sudden you're not. I mean, I just don't
Hmm.
understand how that can happen. All right, moving to another superstar, and this is probably a way overreaction, but Auston Matthews has 0 points to start the season. He's not scored. He doesn't have an assist. He is zero across the board. So, Nick, should Maple Leafs fans be freaking out, hitting the panic button? This guy is why is he's captained his captaincy weighing him down? I don't know. What do you think about Matthews?
No, no, I think we can all say we don't need to worry about him. I mean, I played hockey since I was 7, right? And I'm 27 now, so it's 20 years. The guy scored more goals in last season than I did my entire time at every league, any level I ever played hockey. So I'm not concerned about his ability. I think it's just going to take a little bit of time, like all of this, and he'll probably string together, 7 goals in 3 games, and
Yeah.
we'll all be okay and not worried about it. So no, I'm not worried about Matthews at all.
Well, he
Jacob.
started last season with back-to-back hat tricks.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Right,
I mean, like
exactly.
at this point, I mean, it's you might as well strip the C and trade him.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't see his value anymore. No, there's not much to worry about with Auston Matthews. He is the best goal scorer of this generation. If you're telling me that Ovechkin didn't go 3 games without a point in his career, like you're wrong. And so yeah, I've got nothing to worry about. It is funny, haha, convenient that it is right after he gets the captaincy.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, the Leafs fans are the most passionate in the league, and they are all going to overreact because that's what they do. That's not a bad thing. They're
No.
just that there's so many of them, and they're very loud. Um, yeah, so I'm gonna look at Matthews. I'm gonna say that's fine. He's fine.
I agree. I mean, it's something I know people are kind of really maybe not freaking out, but it's saying, well, what the heck's happened with them? The whole core hasn't really done a lot in the first few games. I mean, the core four, as they call them.
Do
Um,
any of them have a point yet?
Nylander's a couple goals now. I was
Does he?
looking. Tavares is a goal. Marner has a goal. So I mean, they all have
Okay.
goals except for Matthews. So
What a bomb.
rest of them have a goal now. Yeah, it's something I think you get concerned, of course, if he goes like 5, 6, 7 games, maybe. I mean, then you say, well, what the heck's happening with him? But yeah, 3 games I think is kind of overreaction when he's not scoring. But I guess when you're looking at last season, he's the back-to-back hat tricks. He has 6 goals by now. Where the heck?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, and they have Berube in there now, and I'm from St. Louis, so I love Craig Berube and brought the Stanley Cup to St. Louis. He's a great coach, but who knows how much it might take for just him to adjust, if there is any adjustment. Maybe he's asking him to do a few different things and he's just thinking about it. Maybe there's
Mm.
nothing going on and it's just a new face behind the bench. But I wonder if that's going to take the team a little bit of time to adjust to. He's probably a different voice. I mean, obviously he's a different voice. And he probably expects a lot from Matthews, obviously, now that he's got the captaincy. And maybe there's a little bit of a feeling out period there going on. That's nothing to worry about, but it could take a few games.
True. I think that that's something to kind of look at, especially with, I mean, of course, Berube is going to be looking at playing much better defensively,
Mm.
and that could be something that maybe affects the offensive players. I don't know. We'll see at the end of the season how much their point totals go down. But yeah, but looking at Berube in St. Louis too, I mean, he had guys that would put up quite a few points. I don't know if any of them were like 100-point guys, but I mean they still could score. It
Oh
wasn't like
yeah.
they were winning 1-0 all the time.
Mhm.
So yeah, we'll see how Matthews does. I think he's fine. It's a little surprising he doesn't know what doesn't have an assist. I mean, I think we get an assist off some of these, but yeah, we'll see. Jacob, you have any other takeaways from the season so far that you want to mention that we haven't talked about yet?
I don't think so. I think we've covered everything I wanted to bring up.
What about you, Nick?
No, no, this has been great. I've got nothing else, and it's just it's been fun. I feel like it's been a fun start.
Yeah, it's been interesting with some teams how they've gone. I mean, some teams have started how everyone kind of expected, but yeah, there's some surprises, and yeah, it's been an interesting start to the season for sure. All right, let's do our quick fire, and I'll start with you, Jacob, on this first one. Again, very early on, but you got to look at some of the rookies that are doing right, how they're doing right now. I Of the guys that have points and goals, you got Seamus Casey, Macklin Celebrini, who's injured right now. Lane Hudson, Logan Stankoven. Who's been the most impressive of those four? I mean, I think Seamus Casey is the one guy that you probably wouldn't put in this category when you started the season, but he's got a couple goals.
Yeah, Seamus Casey definitely in that conversation as well, but I'm going to go with Logan Stankoven. He just scored his fourth assist in his third game of the season. We saw what he was capable of last year. He's a very speedy guy, good two-way guy, and he's also putting up some great points. And I don't know where Dallas keeps finding these guys. It's insane the offensive turnover that they have on that team, and somehow they have an incredibly young superstar roster with Jamie Benn still on the team and Tyler Seguin still on the
Yeah.
team. Like, I don't get it. It's kind of like that how the Rangers went from first overall pick to Eastern Conference champion or
Yeah.
finalists.
Mhm.
But
It,
yeah, I'll go Stankoven.
yeah, they keep finding these late round guys. I mean, Stankoven, I'm not late round, but beyond the first round. He was a second round pick when he should have been a first rounder. I'll keep saying that he should have been a first round pick. But
Mhm.
yeah, he's been really good, and I thought he was going to be good. Nick, what about you of these four guys? Who are you most impressed by?
I think for me, the only reason I'm not picking Stankoven is we've seen a little bit of what he does. So to
True.
say that it's just expected at this point maybe is a lot for him, considering that he's still a rookie, but
That's
we
fair
saw what
though.
he can do in the
Yeah.
playoffs. And I mean, that kid, I think something happened where he wasn't playing because of COVID, and that's why he dropped in the draft. I could be mistaken about that. And I think I might be mixing him up with someone
I
on the
think that's Wyatt
Stars.
Johnston.
Is that Johnston?
That's
Okay.
Yeah, it
Johnson.
might
But
be
it,
Stankoven as well, but it is Johnston for
It,
sure.
I'm
no, Stankoven, we went through the whole draft here saying he's probably going to drop to the second round because of his size, and that's what happened.
Right.
So exactly what I didn't say is what you're saying.
Yeah.
But to me, it goes to show though, I'll try to, recoup here that they've got good eyes down there on these players, and Stankoven is not my pick because he's proved it. So I'm going to go with Lane Hudson, and he's got 4 assists. And I checked his ice time, and the kid is playing like 18 to 20 minutes a
Mm.
night. And it's impressive to jump into the NHL and doing that. I've
Mm.
heard that he's going to be good, and he looks like he's delivering in a small sample size. The way that he skates, he's kind of got that smooth,
Mm.
shifty ability back there. I actually saw a funny clip of him behind the net trying to break the puck out, and Brady
Yeah.
Tkachuk was having none of it and making fun of his fakes and his deets back and forth. But as much he wants to make fun of it, he's probably a little jealous because that Hudson kid can skate. So he's my pick.
Yeah, well, we had a discussion in the last episode talking about he should be the first on the first unit power play
Mhm.
QB. So I'll
It,
get your thoughts quick on that. Do you think he should be the first unit QB right now?
Well, who do they have, if I can
Mike
ask? Who is
Matheson.
running it? Uh,
Matheson.
I like Mac Matheson. He actually kind of like Matheson has some of that skating ability as well, but to give Hudson the experience would be good. But maybe that's what they're just waiting for, is give him a little time to wet his feet and then put him in. But I like Mac Matheson. I haven't watched him play that much this season, but that guy's got some skill too. So that's not bad option.
Yeah, I mean 60 plus points last season, so he's got the
You can't
track record.
complain there. Yeah.
And I do just want to say I went in on Hudson a little bit in the last episode, saying it's cool that he can do all these things, but he didn't actually do anything with the puck. Now he's doing stuff with the puck, and he is impressive, and especially after watching him against the Senators, like he's very very skilled player, and that was more so just a bit of a banter take, just saying that, and I'm not just trying to walk it back, but.
Yeah, well, the
No,
word on the
he
street
was
is he
very
heard
good.
you say that, so that's actually what's
Yeah,
been motivating
yeah.
him. So good job.
That was it. Me and my buddy Lane Hudson over here.
Yeah.
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 For sure. All right, I'll start with you on this one, Nick. What non-playoff team from last year, it didn't make the playoffs, has been the most impressive so far?
Well, I'm on the Utah train, so I'm going to say Utah.
Hmm.
And my close second was St. Louis. And I think they've shown a lot of resilience. I think they're 2-1. But yeah, Utah for me. I think, and I'm sorry if I missed it. I was lagging a little, but the Coyotes had that late season push last year where they were gaining some momentum. So maybe I'm not as surprised with them, but for me, they've looked good. And I think we've already kind of beat the dead horse there with all they've got going for them. But I think they've looked the best after not making the playoffs last season,
What about you,
if we can
Jacob?
technically say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, true. What about you, Jacob? Who are you been most impressed by that hasn't didn't make the playoffs last season?
I think over the course of this show, by the time we hit our mid-season stride, I'm gonna own a Utah jersey. Yeah.
Me
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. I've been preaching them this since episode 1 of this podcast, and I'm gonna live and die on that team.
Yeah, I was gonna go with Utah too. I've been really impressed by them and looking at what the young players have done to start, and of Clayton Keller, of course, finally becoming the captain, and he's leading the way. I think they've been the most impressive, and now that they got I'm not saying the Coyotes had a bad fan base or anything like that, but it seems like they've got a more passionate fan base in Utah to start. Nothing against
And they just
Coyotes
didn't
fans.
have a chance in Arizona. They
Yeah,
didn't have a
okay.
chance to show how good of a fan base they are.
That's very true. I mean, with all the relocation stuff and different where they're going to be, and yeah, it was a big mess. I think that's the biggest thing. I think Arizona should get a team back, but it's got to be really stable with where they're going to be, the arena, and all that stuff for it to work, I think. All right, well, let's stay on the Utah train too. Dylan Guenther, he leads the NHL in goals with five right now. I Jacob, predict how many will he finish with?
How many did Matthews finish with last year?
69.
All right, double it, 138. I think he's gonna set the record from year 1 in Utah with 138 goals. No, I think he's gonna hit 35 for sure. That's my bet. I'm gonna say he lands at 43.
All right. First 40 goal season. Nick, what about you? Where is Genther finishing?
Well, it's going to sound like I'm copying Jacob, but I have 40 at least. 43 seems like a good number. Um, but yeah, I think he's going to hit 40. It would take some serious slowing down for him not to be at that mark. I know he won't have five like this in every two games, but that kid's shot is unbelievable. I
Yeah.
mean, it's Matthews-esque, and in some ways, it's a little even, dare I say, more deceptive sometimes in what I've seen. I don't want Leafs fans coming at me, but the way that he just gets it up on, I mean, that overtime goal he had the other night, I mean,
Yeah.
it looked like someone playing, knee hockey in their
Yeah.
basement, and it was just unbelievable.
You heard him, Leafs fans. He said Matthews sucks.
I'll take Gunther every day over Matthews.
Well, Jacob already knows I lose sleep every time Genther scores a goal. But yeah, because I really believe the Canucks were gonna pick him if they didn't trade that pick to get Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Connor Garland, I love Connor Garland, so I'm not regretting him getting him, but man, it would be great to have Dylan Genther right now. Hey, he is a heck of a player. His shot has been one of his big assets from his draft, and he's just translated to the NHL. So that's just the biggest thing I think was going to be the strength of his, and he's showing it so far. So he's one of my favorite young players. So I'm glad he's doing well. I'm
Well,
gonna go with the 40 goal mark too. I think he's gonna hit 40.
and I didn't know this, and maybe you guys do, but his ability, it seems like, to find the open ice by that lagging down. I think he's had two goals where on the rush, and he just somehow evades all coverage. And that is a skill. It's almost a mental skill out there on the ice. And I didn't know he had that sort of hockey IQ, but that is impressive. And to beat a goalie, I mean, the first goal he scored, the first franchise goal was almost at the blue line.
Yeah.
So, I
Mhm.
mean, it's not just his shot as much as it is the timing and finding the right space. So it's been impressive.
Yeah, he's been great so far. We'll see how much he can keep going. Like I say, the pace of 5 goals in 3 games, it's probably not going to be sustained. But yeah, with that shot, you never know. He could keep scoring for sure. I'll turn it over to you, Nick. We're going to start a new thing, guest quickfire questions. So, what do you got for us for a quickfire here? And this is, I do not know the question. Jacob does not know the question. You can choose to believe us or not, but
Hey, yeah, I haven't fed them anything, and it's actually good that we finished with Gunther because my question for you both is how many goals do you think Connor Bedard will finish with this season?
oh,
I'm gonna go
uh,
38.
38. Yeah, he started off well too. He's got a heck of a shot too. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, I'm gonna go in the eclipses 40. I'm gonna say
Okay.
41. I'll say 41.
And I only say
Yeah.
38. I know I said Guenther a little bit higher. I say 38 for Bedard just because I like Keller more than anybody else
Hmm.
on anybody on Chicago other than Bedard. And I like Nick Schmaltz probably better than anybody else on Chicago. Like Utah just has a much better core around Guenther than they do than Chicago does for Bedard. And I think I
Hmm.
mean as soon as next year Bedard is going to pass Guenther in goals every year, but
Yeah.
yeah.
All
Good
right.
answers.
Good question. Okay, to finish the show, we've got a few days here before we record next, and I'll start with you, Jacob. What game should everyone be watching in the next few days?
I think tomorrow, well, today when this comes out, Florida Boston round two.
Yes. Yeah, that they of course lost. Boston lost the first game against Florida, so we'll see if they can bounce back there. Nick, what about you? What game should everyone be watching in the next few days?
Well, we mentioned that we're on the Utah train, and you said they're playing the Devils, right? And I'm excited to see how they match up. There's a lot of hype around the Devils, and yeah, I'm excited to see that game, and I'm a little bit not quite on the Devils train. I know a lot of people are, so this will be a good test for Utah, and also, I mean, the Devils have the momentum going so far
Mm.
this season. They've looked good, so tomorrow that one's on my one to watch. I've also been liking a lot of what Quentin Byfield has been bringing to the
Mm.
Kings this season. He's looked strong and he's looked fast. The Kings are playing the Senators, I think tomorrow on Monday when this I guess will drop tomorrow, so today. But yeah, I've liked watching him and that he doesn't get as much love as I think he deserves, and he's a
Mm.
fun player to watch. So some Kings games coming up will be good.
Yeah, I mean, Byfield, I think he's going to be, well, he's going to obviously take over the first, top line center eventually once Anze Kopitar finally retires, which I don't know when
If he
that's going to
does, I mean, a
happen.
natural hat trick to start the season, and he's not going away.
No, he'll be here for a while, but eventually he'll retire.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, Byfield's a heck of a player, and he had some injury issues. I think that's why it's taken a bit for him to kind of take that step. But yeah, he seems to have arrived again here. That's great. It's funny that Utah game was my game to watch. I want to see how they do against New Jersey because yeah, New Jersey started off pretty well. They're 3-1 to start the season. So that's definitely a game to watch. moving forward here and see if
Let me
Utah
ask
their winning
let me
streak.
ask you guys this if we have a second. Since we talked so much about Avalanche goaltending, should we be watching them this week to see
Mm.
what happens there? And I mean, they've given up 12 goals in 2 games. So I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on the Avalanche at large, but specifically their goaltending,
Mm.
to see if anything changes there, because that is a story that's going to be
Yeah.
important for them to figure out.
No, I'll just turn the TV off when they come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not fun. It's not fun to see them lose.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll see if
definitely before the
Kahkonen has a start in here.
Yeah,
yeah,
at some
that's true.
point. Yeah, so we'll be watching. There's quite a few games coming up. I mean, I think the one that has the most games is the day we're going to be recording another episode, and that's the 11 games on Thursday. The rest of the days not very. I mean, Tuesday has 9. But yeah, there are quite a few games coming up, so make sure checking them all out if you can. There's a lot of fun stuff, and of course, we'll see what other news comes up before we start recording our next episode. But thanks, Jacob. Thanks, Nick, for on the show talking all different things hockey here, and we'll have another episode coming out next week. But make sure checking out everything at thehockeywriters.com. We got, of course, bunches of articles every day. And of course, the YouTube channel as well, and our Substack. But until then, we will see you next time.